use the raise. Yep, and we are recording this meeting. Thanks, Robin. See, she's keeping me on track here. So if you've got questions, you can use the raise hand function. And as we go from section to section, we will stop and Robin will pull questions out of the chat and we'll answer the questions. And we'll make sure by the end of the presentation, if we've not been able to answer your questions in the chat, we'll follow up with you separately. So Robin, if you want to get the slideshow going, we're going to start with a word from our president. Everybody needs to salute. Mr. Ed Cheng, thank you so much for being president this year. And Ed, why don't you have a couple words of introduction for us?
Good evening, everybody. Ed Cheng. I wanted to thank you all for coming, both aspiring ride leaders as well as returning ride leaders. For a refresher, you are the critical face of CRW, representing the club to its riders. And frankly, without ride leaders, there would be no rides and there would be no club. We have the benefit of an incredible wealth of ride leader experience this evening with Robin, Mary, John, and Barbara leading this training. I thank the four of you for putting this together, and I look forward to staying on and listening. So take it away, Mary.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction, what we're going to cover tonight, and then we've got we got three other speakers. So hopefully we're going to cover a ton of information. Robin, why don't you go to the next slide for me? I'm going to give you a quick overview, general information, the types of rides the club does, because it's really exploded in the last couple of years. I'm going to give you a brief outline of leader responsibilities. So we're going to go into a lot more detail on that. We're going to talk during the evening about all of the things that have to be done before, during, and after a ride. And I'll say this now, but I'll also remind you later. We do have a ride leader handbook that's probably 30 pages long or so that's available to everybody on the website. And it has all the information that's being covered here and more. So if you're looking for help afterwards, if you don't remember everything, it's in the Ride Leader Handbook, and we'll also be posting the video as well as these slides onto the website probably sometime tomorrow. The other things we'll talk about, other stuff you need to know, we're going to talk about insurance for ride leaders because that's always important to people, resources you have available to you, expense guidelines because we do have funding available to ride leaders if you'd like to run social activities, do some training programs during your ride, give away some swag. We've got expense allocated to that. We talk about how to use that. And then we'll also talk about the steps that you have to take after watching this video tonight to become a ride leader. And next slide, Robin. Types of rides. I'm going to spend just a couple minutes because we have added a lot of different ride types in the last year or two. So I'm going to talk briefly about all of these just so everybody understands the difference and what these different ride types are. There was a recent CRW poll that went out that hopefully most of you participated in. And the weekend led rides by far and away are most popular. And led rides being those that go out at a specific pace with a leader and potentially a sweep, where people don't get left behind and are able to ride with others, maybe the people they know, people they don't know, but at a pace that they're comfortable with and knowing that somebody else is kind of helping with the navigation on the route. So you're going to see a lot of emphasis this year on having some number of led rides, especially on our weekend rides. So if we have 50 or 60 people show up, we don't expect to have leaders for all of them, but if we had a led ride of a 12 or 13 mile an hour speed and maybe a led ride of a 14 or 15 mile an hour speed, you're sure to get people wanting to join you on those rides. The other one, if it's not a led ride, is the old CRW tradition of a show and go ride where everybody shows up, ride leader gives a safety talk, reviews the route, and then sends people off in different groups depending on what pace they expect to ride at. So show and go is something that we've been doing for a long time. People seem very familiar with. The recurring rides are those that run on a regular schedule, either weekly or monthly. Often they follow the same route every week, but not always. And the recurring rides can be either led rides or show and go rides. And if you've ever done any of the weekday rides, the Wednesday Wheelers is a very popular one that uses an interesting technique called a human arrow to keep their groups together, where there's always somebody standing on a corner pointing out the way for the next person to go. And the human arrow doesn't leave the corner until the sweep tells them that they're the last person. So that's described in more detail in the Ride Leader Handbook. If you've never done a human arrow ride, but it's a great way to keep a group together and to keep riders involved. Adventure rides is something we started, I think 2 years ago. They're typically multi-day rides. They can be road rides, bike trails, or gravel, and they usually involve some kind of overnight. We don't like to do single track rides and not mountain biking. We are not a mountain biking club, and our insurance does not cover mountain biking. So if you're looking for mountain biking, there's other groups in New England that do that. The adventure rides are typically self-supported, and there may or may not be a support vehicle, and that's at the discretion of the leader as to whether or not there's a support vehicle. These rides are always run as no drop rides, meaning nobody gets left behind, just given the nature of the distances and the remote starts that they have. And participants are typically responsible for their own expenses. So if there's an overnight stay at a hotel or even a campsite, that's the responsibility of the participants. Because of the complex nature of adventure rides, if anybody here tonight is interested in leading adventure rides, you need the permission of the coordinator, Emily Vigant, and she will talk to you about what it takes to run an adventure ride. Centuries, everyone's familiar with our centuries. We typically run 2 a year with distances of 162 miles or 50. Lately, our centuries have been either fully or partially supported. And honestly, the issue with centuries is that we need an experienced group of people organizing the centuries, and we've had a hard time recruiting volunteers for that. So if anybody wants to work on an organizing committee for the centuries, we're always recruiting for that, and we're looking for people to help with that. This season, we're running a partially supported century in the spring, and we're hoping to run a fully supported century in the fall. We often have led groups on the centuries if we can find volunteers, and that's always appreciated. DEVO, short for development. These are performance-oriented rides where the focus is on fitness, techniques, and skills. Some seasons there might be a theme to the rides. There might be climbing or improving power output, and there's often, the DEVO group often does indoor rides during the winter to help with these techniques. DEVO rides often have challenging rides like iconic mountain climbs and time trials. And we do have one DEVO ride for the ordinary man, as I call it. The Thursday night fitness ride also focuses on technique, skills for pace lines and that kind of thing, but not necessarily for high performance riders. And so we're trying to appeal to both the high performance riders as well as the everyday people who just want to improve their skills. And so there's a place for everybody in the club. The diversity rides are rides that find a way to make CRW more welcoming to all. We try to create rides for people of color. So for example, we've run Major Taylor and Kitty Knox rides in the past, and we're trying to run more rides out of Boston with city starts, so that we're trying to attract more people of color, and we do have a diversity coordinator this season. So we're hoping to do more of that. Gravel rides are on mixed terrain, so they can be gravel roads, double track, rail trails, surfaces that are stone dust, packed dirt, or soft materials, again, not mountain biking, and usually wider tires. So looking for people with gravel bikes rather than just a road bike. So more of those coming this year. The hub rides regularly start at the same location and time, multiple routes to accommodate all riders. And the goal of a hub ride starting in the same location is for people to meet others who live nearby so that they can start to have more folks that they can ride with, starting to build just some sense of community. The women only rides are, for that purpose, women only. There's rides, workshops, and events. They sometimes will run women only rides as part of a regular weekend ride. So you might have a weekend ride with 50 people, but there might be a women only group going out. And they're really focusing on creating a welcoming, supportive environment for women. And that program has grown very quickly over the past 2 years. And the other thing I like about the women only rides is there's encouragement for people to show up early to socialize and then potentially stay afterwards. So it's a very social component to that. And the indoor rides are run during the winter on trainers. Some people do Peloton, some people do Zwift, some people do dumb trainers, but we're doing more indoor rides just so we can encourage people to stay fit over the winter season. So depending on the types of rides you're leading, Robin, next slide, please. We have coordinators for all of these different types of rides, and this information is available on the website under the contact information. And if you're interested in leading any of the specialty rides, these are the folks that you would want to talk to. And we will recommend that when we talk about the requirements to becoming a ride leader, if you're interested in leading a specialty ride, that one of your co-leads be with that specialty ride type. So we wanted to just give you an idea of who is responsible for these different ride types. And so this list is here. And again, it's available on the website as well if you're looking for the contact information for these folks. Next slide, please. Core responsibilities for ride leaders. Planning the ride is going to be the biggest thing in terms of the route selection and the GPS route. And John is going to talk about this at great length. Picking the date, the start time, and the location. Social activities or ride themes. I mean, when we've had themes in the past, sometimes those are the most fun rides, and you can't beat having a lunch stop where everybody can gather for lunch or ice cream or something like that along the way. And also trying to organize lead groups, and we'll talk more about that. Other responsibilities, and again, we'll show you how to do this, how to post a ride on the calendar listing. We're going to do a demo of that tonight. And social media postings, this is not required, but is optional. But if you do social media postings on Slack or Facebook, you'll probably get a lot more attendees for your rides. Next slide, please. In addition, ride responsibilities, making sure that people are registered, and we'll talk about the registration process. And you've probably all seen this when you registered for rides that you've attended. The pre-ride talk is required. Both the ride leader is responsible for a route description as well as a safety talk. Safety talk we'll discuss further, but that is a requirement of our insurer that we do a safety talk, and that's why we do it. And then the management of the ride, making sure people start comfortably, doing what you can to manage the ride on the road, because we realize you can't be everywhere. And accident scene management we'll touch upon briefly. Next slide, please. And just some assuredness for you of the things that you're not responsible for, because this is what some people sort of panic about. Ride leaders, you're not there to do ride with GPS tech support. So if somebody shows up at the ride start and says, well, I don't know how to use ride with GPS, or I haven't been able to download the route, then you're going to have to say, sorry, I hope you have a cue sheet, find somebody to ride with. You're not expected to do tech support. You're not also expected to be the mechanic there. Fixing flats is not your job. Riders need to know how to fix their own flats, and leaders and co-leaders strongly recommend you know how to fix your own. And if you don't, you want to figure it out and learn how to do that. Lots of YouTube videos out there, but you want to be able to do that before you start leading rides. You're not expected to ride with the slowest person. There's always going to be somebody who's going to show up on a mountain bike who's out of shape. Not necessarily your responsibility, but I will speak from personal experience. When I have decided to devote my ride that day to the slowest person, you get some really grateful people, and you're able to impart some really helpful knowledge about how they might be prepared for future rides. Late arrivals, again, not your responsibility. If people can't show up on time and they miss half the safety talk or half of the route description, it's not up to you to wait for them after the fact. We're also not the domestiques here. So carrying extra food and water for longer rides, not your responsibility. Again, if you help people out, you can. Other riders can often assist, but that's not what you're expected to do as a ride leader. And finally, we do not require first aid training for ride leaders, and we're not expecting you to carry a first aid kit because most of what we do are road rides. First aid, the first thing you do is you call 911, unless it's something not that serious, but that is not expected of ride leaders. So if you're feeling like those are some things that you can't do, then you don't necessarily have to worry about them. And by the way, you also don't have to be the fastest rider either. I've gone out a lot of times where I've been supposedly leading groups and people pass me. And if they pass me, my rule has always been, hey, if you pass me, you're on your own. And people are generally fine with that. Next slide. Becoming a ride leader. We've got a couple of steps for you to go through. First is going to be what you're doing this evening, attending ride leader training. Or after the fact, we're going to post this, and people who want to join later in the season can watch the Zoom presentation. You're expected to read the Ride Leader Handbook. I wrote it. Come on, people. It took me a long time to write it. I did a lot of updates this year, a lot of good information in there, taking maybe half an hour to get through it. Really suggest people read through that. It's under the Ride Leader tab on the website. And Robin says, Robin's sending me chats while I'm trying to talk to you. She says, it's amazing. It's everything you want to know. And you can also find it under the resources tab on the website. And once you've been through the Zoom presentation and you've read the handbook, we're asking people to co-lead at least 3 rides. And this will give you enough experience as a co-leader that you feel more confident as a leader. And when we ask you to co-lead 3 rides, we really recommend that you reach out. I mean, it's great to do it with your ride leader buddies, but reach out and do it with 1 or 2 ride leaders that you don't know. I mean, you can find these people on the calendar and just, text them or email them and ask if you can co-lead with them. You're going to learn a lot more from people that you don't know, rather than going out with the same people all the time. And during those 3 rides, on 1, you're going to have to do a safety talk, and we're going to talk about how to do that. We'd like you to lead at least 1 no drop group and hopefully not drop anybody. We'll talk about how to do that. And then the 3rd is just a ride of your choice, and it could be a specialty ride. So if you want to lead a gravel ride in the future, then we suggest that one of your co-leads be on a gravel ride. And once that's done, you send an email to either myself or Emily, who's responsible. She's the executive vice president, and she's responsible for a lot of the specialty rides. Send us an email, give us a list of the rides that you co-led, the names of the leaders, and the responsibilities you had on those rides, so that we know that you've done that. And I hope it doesn't sound like a lot. And honestly, if you really want to do it, you could probably knock this all out in a week, because we have weekend rides and we have lots of weekday rides. And if you really wanted to do this, you can get through all of this in a week or 2 to become a leader. And we're hoping everybody who's with us tonight decides to do that. Next slide, Robin. And we're going to move on to picking a ride, and Barbara's going to step in from here.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Barbara Jacobs, and I actually am the bike coordinator for Bike Thursday, which is a Thursday morning ride for folks who ride in the 10 to 12 mile an hour range. So if you're interested in our group, let me know. But we're going to talk today about picking a ride. And when we think about picking a ride, we're looking at what are we going to do? How are we going to find a route? Many of you have your own. I see some people who are familiar, and I know you have your regular rides. But if you don't have a regular ride, how are you going to find one and developing it yourselves? But what type of ride do you want to be leading? As Mary mentioned, all the different types. We have some examples here of a gravel ride and a woman's ride. So why don't you go on? So what makes a good ride? For me, and I think for most people, it's a really good route. It's friendly leaders and participants. And ideally, and I think that this is one of the things we want to do in CRW, is get time to socialize before, during, and after a ride. We want to, socialization helps us bring in new members and also have people favorably come back to our rides and enjoy our rides. Next, Robin. A good route, scenery, always scenery. The length depends on what you're interested in leading. It could be a short, medium, or long ride. It depends. Weekday rides or some rides and recurring rides are a certain amount of mileage. It totally depends on what you're willing to do. Good roads. Oh, that's hard to find around here right now. The roads are chopped up. Hopefully they'll get repaired. But thinking about is as much as you can, good roads, the terrain, how hilly you want to have a ride, and of course, limited car traffic as much as possible. You really don't want to ride on Route 20 and Route 16 for 2 hours. That's just not fun. Robin, one more? Okay. What to avoid when planning a route? Poor road conditions. I've talked about that in construction. We are in Eastern Massachusetts. Construction pops up daily. You never know where it's going to be. You could have looked at a ride and checked it out on Tuesday, and by Friday or Saturday, you've got a detour somewhere. So you do want to be aware of that. And I see something from Mary that says Bike Thursday will start soon, May 5th. is when it starts. Avoid excessive left-hand turns or unsafe turns. If you're going on to a more trafficked road, you want to avoid a left-hand turn if you can. You can't always do that, but if you can. Steep descents, you want to make sure that it's safe at the bottom to make a turn or to stop. Bike paths. Bike paths are usable, but you want to think about when you're going to do it. Do you want to do it at the beginning of a ride, at the end of the ride? You need to think of like the Minuteman rush hours and early morning and late afternoon around 5 o'clock. But weekends, that's family day. And that's when parents are out there training their kids how to ride a bike. You want to avoid, as far as I'm concerned, you want to avoid that if you can. Next one. Planning a ride. As Mary mentioned, there are a lot of different types of rides. You can have short rides, medium rides, long rides. On a weekend ride, you might want to have more than one type of ride. The same basic route with starting with hello, I think somebody's not muted. If you can mute yourself, thank you. If you wanted to offer 2 routes on a ride, one going off from the other, that's great. Weekday and evening rides are usually oftentimes recurring rides. Some of them start different places each week with a different route. Some have the same route, same place, start place. You really want to make sure that your route and your ride with GPS piece is just excellent. You know, it's accurate, and you got to be careful because it's very easy to develop a route and have errors in it. So you really want to review that as much as you can. You really want to check for construction and road closures. I have been on rides that we've had to turn around and go a different way because all of a sudden they're chopping down a tree in Lincoln or somewhere. So you want to check and update your ride with GPS as close to the ride as possible. Next slide. So how do I find routes? I would highly advise, if you're not on Ride with GPS, to get on Ride with GPS. You can always get a free account, but you also, with your CRW membership, you can get into the CRW link, and you have full access pretty much to a route collection. Within that route collections, there are CRW collections all over the area. Concord, Lexington, all Bike Thursday rides. We just have one area just for that, and there are probably about 15 rides in there. Routes from Carlisle, routes from Boston, fall foliage rides. So there are a lot of routes there that you can utilize. Also within the CRW route library and Ride with GPS are rides that you can sort. You can go in and say, I want to know all the rides that start in Lincoln or all the rides that start in Boxford. And you can look, you can sort by distance, you can sort by elevation. So there are tons of rides out there, but they still need to be checked before you use them. You need to make sure that they don't have a lot of errors or have any errors in them. You don't want to lead people that way. Next slide. Also, if you're just using Ride with GPS has tons of routes all over the world. So if you're going out to someplace in New York, you can find a route. Or if you want a route, say in Winchester, you can find a route. Again, you want to check them. They're not always very accurate, so you do want to check them. All right, next slide. Start times. It's your ride, it's your time to start, but think about the weather. Summer, temperatures are hot. You might want to start earlier in the day. Later times for cooler weather. Recurring rides tend to have the same start time all the time, every week or every month, whenever they're having them. Be clear about what time the ride starts. You don't want to confuse people, but you also don't want people to show up late because they're on their own. So daylight hours for early evening and early in the evening starts. You really want to get in before it gets dark. Start locations. Next slide. This is a big one. You really want to check out and make sure that you're going to have enough parking for everyone who plans to show up or you think might show up. Now, remember, you've got a registration list and you could have 70 people on that registration list. You need to have parking for 70 people. Some of them are going to come on their bikes probably, but others are not, and you need to have enough parking for them. So that means you need to really check, where am I going to get that parking? It's not always easy. You need to know about town restrictions. You might need to ask permission, especially if you're going to use a public lot. Just call the town safety officer or the police department. They're really pretty good about this. And I've called them for up in Newburyport and Gloucester and gotten positive answers from them. They know where that they're not going to tow cars and especially if you tell them people are coming there, they'll take notice of that. Commercial lots, if you're going to use a lot with a grocery store or other types of stores, ask permission. We use Donlin sometimes in Lincoln. We ask permission. They tell us where they want us to park. And then I encourage people to buy food there. We always picnic after on a Bike Thursday ride. So I just encourage people to shop at Donlin's because they've given us their parking lot. Private and public schools, you want to talk to the school administration. It's a good thing to do. And to know what's going on. Lincoln Public Schools, we use a lot of times, but for the last 2 or 3 years, they've been in construction. Can't use them. So you got to find alternative parking in the Lincoln area. Watch what you're doing when people are entering and returning from the rides. You don't want to send people down one-way streets. You might have to act as a traffic cop or have somebody as the groups are leaving to hold up traffic so people can get out, especially if it's a left-hand turn. You also, the town might need to ask the town or check their website to see, is there something else going on? Parades, kids events, other things happen. State parks, you might need to get an event permit. Last slide, please. Okay, the amenities before and after the ride. Well, bathrooms a big one. If you do not have bathrooms at a ride start, you might want to tell people, there are no bathrooms here, come prepared, or be prepared to use the green room, okay, the woods. Refreshment stops, lunch breaks, depending on how long the ride is. It's always good to have, it's a great social time. And then after ride refreshments with post-ride parties or picnics. The Bike Thursday rides that we do, I don't mean to promote them, it's more that we do not have a ride without a picnic or a stop at a cafe or a restaurant to get food. That's part of our rides. It's part of what we do. I believe Wednesday Wheelers is the same thing. And, you know, it's just good to have that. And it's fun for people. And there are funds available. Done.
There,
Okay.
now I'm unmuted.
John, 1 second. Robin,
Sure.
is there anything in the chat, any questions that we need to cover, or are we sort of caught up on questions?
Nope, I think we're good. We've been answering them in the chat as we've been going.
Okay.
And the green room, I saw one, you know, the green room is the woods.
Yeah, I've not heard that before either. That was great, Barbara. All right, John, go ahead.
That's
You're
new.
up next.
Awesome,
you.
thank you. Robin, I am going to have to share my screen, if that's all right, after the slide, obviously. Okay, so anyway, hi folks, John O'Dowd. If you don't know me, I'm the club secretary. I'm also a ride leader. I've been leading rides for CRW for over 10 years now. Several of them, I'm told that I actually did a decent job. So I guess that qualifies me to talk to you tonight. So I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to start with advertising your ride. So there are several different channels that CRW has for advertising your ride. And the primary one is the club ride calendar. And in about a minute, I'm going to show you exactly how to go about doing that if you've never done it before. The club has several other different channels in which you can advertise your ride. We have our Facebook group, we have our Slack channel, we have Google Groups. The only one that you're absolutely required to list your ride on is the ride calendar at the website. The others are ancillary. If you'd like to throw your ride out on any one of those, you're welcome to. Just remember, if you make any changes to your ride, you have to go and change all of them wherever you've posted them. Next slide, please. Okay, so for creating your ride, obviously you have to do a little bit of homework first. Obviously, like Barbara said, you pick out a route that you're going to do, you come up with a title, you pick a date, a location, you write up a description. If you can scrounge up some assistance, that's always great. If you want to have a nice image to post along with your description, that's always a good thing to have. And of course, you're going to need your Ride with GPS route number, and I'll show you how to get to that in just a minute. Next slide, please. Okay, here we are. We are about to see how the sausage is made. Okay. Having a little technical difficulty here. Can you folks see my screen?
No,
No.
I just gave you permission though. Try again.
Okay, let's see what we got going on here.
And if you could make that window larger, that would be great, John. As big as possible.
That's about as big as I can make it.
Looks good.
Okay, all right, great. So you're all familiar with this website. I think you've been here before, Ride Calendar. To start a ride, or I should say to create a new ride, once you become a ride leader, you're going to have this nifty tab right here. And you go down and add a new ride. And you're going to come up to a page with 4 different tabs across the top. And we start from left to right. And we pick out a route name. And I'm just going to do an actual route here that I'm going to lead. And first thing, the default is ride. The others are, you're really not going to touch this unless you're setting up an event or a century or something. So you just obviously leave that as the ride. Date, obviously, you know the date that you're going to do this. Here, I'm just going to take May 28th. Hope nobody else had a ride that day. If you're running a repeating ride, you'll click this, but this is a one-time ride. Time, you put in whatever time you want your ride to jump off at. Now, if you have multiple routes and you're expecting a big group, you can have multiple times. Assuming you get somebody to lead somebody out at that extra time. Obviously, the ride leader, you're going to select yourself. And any other volunteer that just happens to come along. John's going to help me today on this ride. Thank you, John. This is kind of an archaic thing for back when people were a little bit more possessive of their rides. You would tell people that this ride is available to any other ride leader if they'd like to use it. When you get to the bottom of the screen, and I apologize, you can't quite see it, you have a save and a preview button. I'm not going to save right now because that tends to slow things down. And we're just going to wing it and keep moving forward. The ride start. CRW has a plethora of different ride locations that people have already created for you. Mine is going to be in the town of Needham. And my ride's going to start from Cutler Park Reservation. If you don't see your ride start here, you have to create your own ride start, which is fairly simple. And again, back on the CRW Ride Leader web menu, there's a place to do that. The ride image, I'm going to attach an image here to go along with my route. Where are you? There we are. Helps to have everything right there, ready to go when lots of people are watching you. And you can add a title, it's not necessary. Just once you've uploaded your image, you click save, and bingo, there it is. Description, you want to put in something about your route, obviously some kind of something that gives a decent description of what the route's going to be like. This is just something that I happen to have ready to go. I personally, I tend to, I like to tell people what I'm going to be doing, but I don't constrain them. So I say, you know, ride leader, this is what I'm going to be doing, but you're free to do whatever it is you like. Now, underneath the description, there is a note section, and this is a simple one-line blurbs that you want to communicate to your riders. Most popular one is, and also, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. And again, you get down to the bottom, you can save, but I'm going to be bold and jump right to the next tab. Now, again, Mary talked about this at the beginning. You select the ride type that you're going to have. My type, I'm leading a group, so I'm going to select lead group, but I'm also giving people the option to go off and do their own thing. So I'm going to select both of these. Arrow, I don't dare talk about that, or Mary will reach through the screen and slap me. What we're going to do now is go down to our Ride with GPS. And if you've worked with Ride with GPS before, then you know that all the routes have a unique number, identification number. So this is the route, one of the routes that I'm going to lead. And if you go up here to the address, you'll see that it's got a route number. All you have to do, copy, paste, and I've got multiple. I'm not going to do all three, but you get the idea. You can go back and add multiple routes. Cue sheets, Ride with GPS automatically generates a cue sheet, but personally, I think they look like caca. The Ride with GPS website permits you to create a customized cue sheet that's actually pretty simple to do, and I can show you on another occasion if you're interested. Get in touch with me. I'll be happy to show you how to do it. I'm not going to get into it right now. This field, I should say, is for your ride identification number, and that will get filled out for you. This is where you can set your limit of the number of riders that you want to have show up. Personally, I don't like to deal with more than 50 people at a time, so I'm just going to throw that in there. And the last one we're not going to touch. Well, I'm going to show you. If you have to, if the worst happens and you have to cancel the ride, this is where you come to cancel it. So I'm going to save this now. This will take a few seconds. And there we are. You can see I got my title. This is a boilerplate information that comes with all rides that you generate. It's your registration area for your riders to come in and sign up for your ride. And there's my description. These are my notes, my little bullets, my date, time. Me and John are going to run this. This is the kind of ride. And here's the only Ride with GPS route that I actually uploaded. And over here, obviously, my location. When people sign up, their names will appear here. And that's it for that. We can hop back to the presentation.
Hey, John, this is Philip. couple of comments slash questions. One is, I guess when you're doing a ride limit of 50 people, it doesn't matter what the overrun is. But if you're doing a small ride like 8, I forget, but there's like 5 extra people can sign up. So if you really want 8 people max, you have to set the ride limit at 3, I think. Someone else can fill in the details there. Just be aware that whatever you set the limit to, the website allows X number more people to sign up than your limit.
Thank you, Phil, because I actually didn't know that.
Yeah,
Good point.
it really only matters for a small number of riders. The other thing is I had a problem with, on my rides last year, I accepted the default URL. And then
Philip, I'm going to interrupt here. Let's hold the questions to the end because we have a lot of presentation material and I'm really fearful if we get bogged down now, we're not going to get through it. If you could hold that to the end, and if we don't get to it, put it in the chat and we'll get an answer out to everybody, but I'd like to keep going. Thank you.
Hi, so anyway, is this the next slide, Robin?
Yep.
Okay, so obviously rider registration. This is what you need to do, or I should say your riders are going to need to do. We started doing this, I think it was last year. It was a function of our new insurance company. We have to have our riders register. There is obviously the beginning of the ride posting. You saw where the boilerplate part of the post for the riders to register at. Personally, I really like this. It gives you a list of the people who have signed up for your ride. And also, if they volunteer that information, they also tell you which route they're going to do and at what pace they're going to do. And if you're an organizational nut like I am, then this is just, this is candy. It really helps you in terms of organizing your ride the night before the ride. You have to sign up for your own ride. Make sure that you are registered for your own ride. Again, like I said, you can see it lets you see who has signed up for your ride. And the evening before the ride, you will get an email with this information that you can, again, if you're an organizational nut like me, you can post it into a Excel spreadsheet and move it around and organize people so you know what you're going to be dealing with the next day. Next slide, please. Okay, so the week before the ride, there's some things you should do. Next slide, please. And I apologize because I'm going to have to reiterate some of the things that Barbara has talked about, but you definitely should go and check your route. It's always good if the last minute, like the week before, you can get out and drive the route, bike the route, make sure that no nasty surprises have occurred since the last time you went and checked out this route. If you're lucky enough to enlist an assistant, this is a great task for them to do. Again, like Barbara said, test the GPS files. If you've created them and you haven't tried them out, definitely go out and do them because Ride with GPS can do some funky things at intersections sometimes. If you generate a cue sheet, definitely proofread it. Again, the Ride with GPS app can play tricks at intersections where it'll end up saying that there's multiple turns at one intersection, which drives me crazy. Know what it is that you're going to say at the ride. Prepare in your head what exactly you're going to say so that you're not stumbling around with your words like I am tonight. Know the safety talk that you're going to give. That way, hopefully it goes smoothly. You want to keep it short and to the point. Next slide, please. So you definitely want to also check your calendar post, make sure that the links are working, make sure that you can download those GPS files in that cue sheet if you choose to put one up there. Go through, just proofread it or have a friend proofread it, double check the length of the routes, make sure that everything is accurate. Click on the location, on the location part of the post, there's a map location that shows people exactly where the ride's going to start. Make sure that that's working. Next slide. Cancellation and postponement. What a sad thing to have to talk about. I don't know if any of you have ever been to New England before, but the weather changes very quickly around here and it cannot be all that pleasant sometimes. So why would you have to cancel a ride? Well, obviously, if the weather is really nasty and if it's dangerous, you know, if we don't want to take people out in a thunderstorm, we don't want to take them out in hail or anything, or icy road conditions. So this, you really have to use your judgment on this. You should also not get too hung up on getting obsessed on the weather. I've fallen for this trap myself. Monday, the week before the ride, you start watching the weather and you obsess every day over it. Don't fall into that. It's better to start looking at the weather maybe 2 or 3 days ahead of time, because again, the weather reports change. If you have to cancel or postpone, make sure that you do it the night before the ride, preferably before 11 o'clock, and you go back to your ride posting. Once you post your ride, you can edit it and go in. And like I showed you, that last tab on the far right of the screen, you can go in and cancel your ride. At the very, very latest, you probably want to make this decision 7 a.m. the day before the ride. And again, if you're going to cancel, make sure that you cancel all your posts on the different channels that you have posted it on Facebook, on Slack, on Google Groups. Now, assuming the weather's not going to be a great day, there's a chance of some drizzle, but it's not going to be a washout, and you decide you're not going to do the ride, but you're not going to cancel it. In that situation, you still have to show up for the ride, and you have to do everything that you would do as if you were going to do the ride, such as you need to give the route wrap, you need to describe the route, you need to talk to people, give the safety talk, answer any questions, and then organize people and send them out. And again, like I said, don't get too hung up on the weather a week ahead of time. Personally, I like to watch a real weather report because there are a lot of subtle nuances that I get rather than just looking at the weather app on my phone. Next slide, please. Day of the ride. Next slide. Yes, party time, club ride, excellent. My recommendation, get there at least 30 minutes early. Double check if you have to a long drive, double check the traffic on your phone. Make sure that there's no traffic jams. That actually happened to me last summer. There was a half-an-hour backup on the highway trying to get to my ride. Be ready for what you are going to need for the day of the ride. Actually, I should have said this is the night before the ride. Get all your gear together. Make sure you've got everything that you want to bring. I like to throw everything together on the bench and just make sure I've got everything before I go. Make sure that your bike is ready. No flat tires. Just make sure tires are pumped up, your lights are charged, your GPS is charged. Personally, I like to bring the roster of riders who have signed up for my ride. I think that's an important thing to have. And I also like to once I get all my stuff together, I like to just put it in the car so that the morning of the ride, I don't have to think about it. I'm not running around trying to find stuff. I just get up, have breakfast, and go. Next slide, please. So you've made it to the parking lot. You're there, and people are pulling in, and you're thinking, oh my God, what have I got myself into? Very first thing, it's not on the list, but the first thing is get your own stuff together first. Get your bike out, pump up your tires if you need to, get the GPS loaded. Make sure that you're ready to go when you finish the route talk. Once you've got that taken care of, what I like to do is I call it working the parking lot. I walk around, I introduce myself to people. say, hey, you here for the ride? Most obviously. I say, first thing I do, I check to see if they are registered. If they are not registered, I ask if they can please get on their phone and go to the website and sign up for the ride. I'll just, find out if they are signed up for the ride, obviously, like I just said. And then I know what this person's going to be doing, if they're going to be a fast person, they're going to be someone taking their time. It's just good information to have. If you will encounter people who are talkative, my suggestion is that you diplomatically break off if some people want to tell you their life story. One strategy I have is I see a car pull in and I say, oh, gee, Bob's here. I really got to go talk to him. I'll talk to you later. One other thing you want to do is tell people when you're going to get everyone together to give the route talk, and tell them where you're going to do it. And so just so that they know what to do before the time to ride. Another thing to check on is if someone is a newcomer. These people will usually volunteer that information. They'll tell you, hey, I'm new. These people are very important, and it's very important that you have a welcoming demeanor, be friendly, ask if they have any questions. You are the face of CRW, and you only get one chance at a first impression. So keep that in mind. Next slide. So the route wrap and the safety talk, again, make sure you know what it is you want to say. You want to keep it short. People are not going to listen for more than about 5 minutes or so, and they're only going to remember a few things. So there's a few things that you really need to communicate. Tell them the most important aspects of the ride, particularly if there are any hazards, if there are any dangerous intersections that they should be aware of. I like to tell people the distances to rest stops, and if necessary, like bathroom breaks. Sometimes they're not readily available, so I like to clue people in where they are at. I like to let people know where the splits are, just in case the group is together for a period of time before they reach the split, and then they're not confused why somebody is going off in a different direction than they are. The safety talk, we have a number of examples of safety talks on the website under the Ride Leader Resources tab. Again, you want to keep it brief, keep to the basics, obey the laws of the road, point out any hazards to your fellow cyclists, stay single file, which is one of my big bugaboos. One thing I always tell my riders, please be responsible, courteous cyclists. And I think that just sort of summarizes the way we should be when we're out on the road. Next slide. So you get 50 people who show up at your ride, and I've been there. It's tough. This is where the roster of riders really comes into play. It really gives you an idea ahead of time what you're going to be dealing with the morning of the ride. So you got some time to strategize how you're going to break people up and send them off, because you can't send, even if you've got 2 or 3 routes, you've got large groups of people going out, and you really don't want to do that. I recommend not having 10 to 12 people leave at a time. And when you've got impatient cyclists on your hand, this can be challenging. So you ask for some volunteers. You say, look, I can't let you guys go all at once. I can only let 10 of you go out at a time. Can I have some volunteers that will hold out and be the second group to leave? I tend to send out the long distance riders first, not to stereotype, but generally the long distance riders tend to be the faster ones, and you want them out on the road first so that they don't get caught behind some of the slower riders and create a traffic jam and traffic nuisance. Definitely smaller the group, the better. And just ask people to be patient. Again, if you have a sense that your ride's going to be popular and you get a lot of people, it really helps if you can recruit a ride leader assistant, someone who you can break the group up and take them out in a couple different groups. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Mary. Thank you.
Robin, just a quick check of the chat. Anything in the chat we need to cover at this point?
No, not right now.
Okay.
We'll definitely have some time for questions at the end too, if people are hanging on to them.
Excellent, good. All right, so during and after the ride, next slide, please. So one thing I like to remind people of is that this is one of the days that you're riding for the club and not yourself. So that the tendency sometimes with ride leaders is once they send the crowd off, that their friends are waiting for them, and then they say, okay, I've done everything, now I'm going to go ride with my friends for the rest of the day. And that's really not what you're here for. You're really there to manage the ride, check in with the riders, be sociable, help when necessary, etc. So during the ride, you just, as you're passing people or people passing you, just be friendly. And if you see somebody stop by the side of the road, at least check in with them. I mean, 90% of the time they're just making a clothing adjustment or they're fiddling with something. But if someone needs help, then that's your day to stop and see what they need help for. So really, you're riding for the members, not for yourself on this day. And as I've said before, I mean, we volunteer because we really want to give back to the club and to the members. And I find it's really gratifying because I've never stopped to help somebody who's been ungrateful for that. If you're doing lead rides that day, John alluded to this a little bit, but you want to organize by speed on a lead ride so that you want to make sure that if you're leading a group, everybody in your group is assuming that they're going to be at about the same speed. It's helpful to count the number of participants in your group. And for lead groups, we recommend no more than about 10 or 12. It's hard to manage more than that. And then you want to go ahead and maintain the speed that was advertised. So if you tell people that you're running a 12 to 14 mile an hour ride, I mean, certainly on a downhill, you might go at 15 or so, and you'll be slower on an uphill, but you want to be watching your average speed and making sure that you're maintaining your speed. I've also had the experience where I've promoted a 12 to 13 mile an hour lead ride, and no matter what I do, I can't get the group to move faster than 11. And that's the day that you end up riding at 11. Sometimes it just happens. Stopping to regroup really helps to kind of keep people together, and having a sweep is really helpful. And if you don't have a designated co-leader, oftentimes you can just ask somebody in the group to behave as the sweep. And I usually, for my first sweep, I look for somebody in really bright, distinct clothing so that I can kind of look in my rearview mirror and I can spot somebody in that bright yellow jacket in the back as a sweep. And more often than not, you can usually get someone to volunteer. And I try to make sure that that person is not the sweep for the entire ride. Sometimes they're happy to do it. Sometimes they want to be out front after a bit. But it's a good way to keep lead groups together, is making sure you have a sweep. Next slide, please. And what to do if lost rider off the back of your group. This is always a tricky one because in a lead group, hopefully if you've got a lead group and you've got a sweep, you're not going to lose anybody. If someone pops off the front and all of a sudden you haven't seen them in a while, my feeling is if they get in front of you as the leader, that's kind of their responsibility. Certainly stopping and regrouping and trying to figure out who you lost is helpful. And this is why having a head count of the number of people in your group is helpful. And if you can take an extra minute or two at the start of a ride, have people introduce themselves to one another within your group, helps to build a little bit of camaraderie. And when you come up with 9 people instead of 10, you can usually figure out who's missing and maybe when the last person, when the last time was that you saw them. Oftentimes you can just wait a couple of minutes and somebody will show up. You can ask passing riders if they've seen somebody who looks like Fred. It's really very situational, but this is something you're trying to avoid. And this is the purpose of having lead groups in the first place. Mechanical problems. Again, we talked about your job is not to be the master mechanic here, but you do the best you can to help people with mechanical problems, whether you can help them. You just have to wait while they're helping themselves and you just don't want to leave them alone. Oftentimes passing riders will offer to stop and help. And I can't tell you how many times somebody's going by and knows how to fix something that I would have no idea to fix. So you want to take advantage of that with mechanical problems. Worst case, if someone has a severe problem that can't be fixed, that's where everyone's got a cell phone. They can call for a pickup, they can call an Uber. If they get AAA will pick you up. So there's different ways of dealing with mechanical problems. Medical emergencies are a little bit different, and we're not going to go into a ton of detail tonight. But this is always a challenge on a road ride, because if you're leading that group of 50 that John alluded to, there's quite possibly the chance that there'll be an accident on your ride and you'll never know about it because it'll happen somewhere behind you, or it'll happen on the long ride and you're on the medium ride or something like that. And so most often we do end up hearing about accidents, and if an accident has happened on your ride and we've heard about it, we'll reach out to you as the leader and make sure you know what happened. If you happen to be on the scene of an accident or come across the scene of an accident, you again are not expected to be the EMT, and you're not necessarily the one who's going to be administering first aid, but as a ride leader, there's some things you want to keep in mind. Crowd control tends to be a huge issue. I can't tell you how many accidents I've been part of or around where everybody else is so shocked that somebody got hurt that they're all standing around staring at the person, and there's bikes everywhere, there's people in the road, there's cyclists in the road. So controlling the crowd becomes part of the job. And this is where you start deputizing people. And it's often helpful to pick 2 people and say, okay, you go up to that corner and you go back to that corner, and just start giving that slow down signal to any passing cars. So nobody's passing really fast. You get everybody out of the road and make sure they're truly out of the road. So the crowd control. And again, you want to designate as much as possible, because you as the leader can't be everywhere doing everything. You or your designee ought to be protecting the victim to make sure that the victim is not in danger of being stepped on by another cyclist or potentially being run over by a passing car. And again, this is where having people warning drivers and sometimes forming a protective circle, if it's safe, around the victim is important. Somebody needs to call 911 if that victim is somebody who really needs emergency help. And I have found more often than not that by the time we figure out where we are and get around to calling 911, a passing motorist has already done that. Figuring out where you are can be a real challenge if you're going through a town and you don't know which street you're on, or you don't know what the crossroad is. And this is also a place where motorists often will stop, and you can ask somebody, because somebody may be able to tell you exactly where you are. But when you call 911, you need to be able to give a specific location to the ambulance services. And again, it's always helpful to have somebody else calling 911. Somebody needs to be attending to the victim. If the victim is not in immediate need of first aid because they're bleeding out or something like that, you want someone who can just sit with the victim and just talk to them calmly, make sure they're not being moved. Everybody knows the rules about not moving anybody, not moving a neck or anything like that, but making sure that that person is calm. If that person was riding with somebody else, a spouse perhaps, the spouse is not always the best person to try to keep the victim calm. And so sometimes you need somebody attending to the victim and somebody attending to the spouse off to the side, so that the spouse is not getting freaked out because of the victim on the ground. And so the Ride Leader Handbook goes into a lot more detail about medical and emergency management. And also it references some resources that you can talk to get more information, or websites that you can go to get for more information. But just be aware of this, that this is going to be something that you may or may not encounter as a leader or as a participant on the ride. And make sure that if you're not helping, make sure that you're not in the way and that others are not in the way. Next slide, Robin. After the ride, if there's been an accident that you're aware of, we do need to have the accident reported to our insurance company, regardless of if anybody went to the hospital or anything like that. If you as a leader are aware of an accident, please contact Emily, the executive VP, or contact myself. Contact information is available on the website, and there's some paperwork that needs to be filled out with the insurance company. We're going to talk about insurance in a minute. But make sure that we get the information and the accidents are reported. We've had occasion in the past where we've had accidents on recurring rides on a route that we travel often. And as a result of the accident and the situation, we've changed the route to make it safer for the riders. So there are reasons to report them. The other thing after the ride, socializing. This is, a lot of people come to club rides because they want to meet other riders. And so having some activity after a ride is something that we encourage people to do. As it's been mentioned, We have budget available to host events, and we also have a social committee that can help you put events together, because we recognize that as a ride leader, it's difficult to be out there on the road leading a ride and to be organizing some kind of event at the end of the ride. And so we do have a social committee that can help you with that. Reach out to myself or any of the other ride coordinators. They can help you put those together. Also, after the ride, it's fun to post pictures on social media. It just builds a lot of camaraderie and jazz, and people really like seeing their pictures. So encourage you to put pictures out there as well. You can see this one here is
Mary,
nice.
I'm gonna
Yep. Go ahead,
I'm going
Laura.
to pause you here for a second, just say that with regard to accidents, a couple
Yep.
of tips have come up in the chat, thanks to Philip. So the registered riders list actually has people's phone numbers on it. So if you need to be coordinating with your fellow ride leaders or a sweep, that's really helpful. And then also, if you aren't sure where you are, bring up Google Maps and it will help you. If you are able to get cell phone reception where you are.
Okay, great, thank you. Next slide, Robin. And then the policy stuff. This is the stuff not so interesting, but always important for ride leaders. So we'll go through this quickly. Robin, next slide. In terms of insurance coverage for ride leaders, so the biggest expense for CRW is our liability insurance. And we keep that because it's important to us as ride leaders. It's important to protect our leaders and the assets of the club. So you as a ride leader, you're insured under our general liability policy in the likely instance of an accident or with either a participant or a bystander, you know, a cyclist hitting a pedestrian kind of thing. You do have a liability insurance, and should someone want to sue you, that'll cover attorney's fees as well. The insurance policy asks for every ride a roster of registered riders. And that registration process, as everyone knows, requires people to sign the liability waiver. This is why we really hammer this registration stuff home, because if we don't have this and there's an accident, it really jeopardizes our insurance coverage for that accident event. Insurance requires a safety talk, so that you must give the safety talk at the start of a ride. I always like to tell people it's like the stewardess on the airplane, that every time you get on an airplane, they tell you how to buckle your seatbelt. Well, the reason they do that is for insurance. That's the reason we do safety talks. As John said, there's resources on the website that will help you do. You can either come up with your own safety talk, or there's a little thing that you can print on an index card and you just read from the card, but you have to do the safety talk. We also have to have a club appointed leader, so that we can't just randomly post rides and run them without leaders. That's not covered by insurance. And we have to show effort that the route has been reviewed prior to the ride being posted. And so this is why we really hammer home that these things need to be done. The online registration takes care of a lot of this for you, so that if people are registered, then the riders are registered and we share the route specific safety information, then we know that that stuff is covered for insurance purposes. In terms of non-members, just to be clear, our non-member policy, people who aren't members of our club can ride 2 rides over the course of a lifetime, and they must register. This has changed from previous years, so if anyone's confused, this is the current policy with our current insurance provider. And when people try to register, that our registration process will catch this. And I just want to remind folks that it's $15 a year to join CRW. It's not that expensive. So my God, if you can afford a bike and a pair of like Pearl Izumi shorts, you can certainly afford to join the club. So don't let people give you a hard time about this. We also have secondary medical insurance available. So for people who are injured on rides, we have secondary insurance, so that if your insurance doesn't cover all of the medical expenses for treatment of your injury, there's possibility of getting reimbursement from our insurer for non-covered expenses. And we have had several riders over the years take advantage of that. And we also, insurance covers special events, and special events can be centuries. They can be things like a ride leader kickoff, where I have a party where people are drinking, so that insurance covers that as well. And there's a lot more information in the Ride Leader Handbook regarding insurance, and it also links to the actual copy of our accident reporting form and a couple other things. So there's a lot more information under the Ride Leader Resources tab on the website. Next slide, please. Reimbursement for ride leader expenses. I know Ed's going to grimace, but we've got expense money allocated this year. If people want to do social activities before or after or during their rides. I'm also encouraging people to think about training and education that you might want to do on the rides. I've mentioned to Barbara if she wants to run a program on how to change a flat tire or you know, how to ride safely in a pace line and you want to hire a coach, we've got money for that because part of our edict as a nonprofit is education. If you'd like to spend some money during a ride, you need prior approval, either from Emily as the executive vice president who manages the ride coordinators for the specialty rides, or myself. Contact us, let us know what you want to do, and we will give you prior approval to get expense reimbursement for your activity. Please note that we don't front you the money. You'll have to put it on your credit card. You'll need receipts for everything. If you don't have a receipt, you don't get reimbursed. But I promise you, if you've got prior approval, if you did what you said you were going to do, and if you turn in receipts, you'll get reimbursed promptly. One caveat, and this is again from our insurance company. If you offer food or alcohol, you need to include a notice in your ride listing that says, hey, you know, we're going to be, you know, free ice cream at the end of the ride kind of thing. And you need to make it available to all riders. You can't get to the end of the ride, find 5 people standing in the parking lot and say, hey, everybody, let's go for a beer. I'm going to buy you a beer. If you make it available to one, you need to make it available to all. And that is something that we're restricted on doing. Next slide, please. Health practices. This was a lot more dramatic when we did the presentation last year because we were in the midst of COVID. So doesn't need to be quite as much this year, but just kind of beware. We're still masking optional for people. And if people want to wear masks, we don't want to shame anybody. If people want to wear masks at a safety talk or during a pre-ride route description or during the ride, they're welcome to do that. Be respectful of other people's preferences. You as a co-leader or leader need to do that. I always carry gloves in my my saddlebag. I mostly use them for changing flat tires so I don't get my hands all greasy, but if anyone's bleeding and you're going to give them any kind of first aid, really helpful to have gloves. I also carry a little thing of hand sanitizer, again, mostly for myself, but the little wet wipes or something, throw a couple in your saddlebag, they're good to have. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but the spitting and the coughing and the snot rockets have really gotten out of hand. I had somebody tell me talking the other day, they got hit by somebody else's snot rockets. And so if you see somebody doing this, you as a ride leader, I mean, riders aren't always feeling comfortable calling somebody else out, but man, if somebody does something disgusting, call them out on it. Because I don't know where that started, but man, the snot rockets have really gotten out of hand. So just like, let's just be respectful here. Next slide, please. All right, that's kind of the bulk of our presentation. I got, think, 1 or 2 more slides, next steps, and then we'll open things up for questions. So just a quick refresh to become a ride leader. You're almost to the end of Zoom presentation. I hope it hasn't been too painful. Read the handbook. I promise it'll be helpful. 3 co-leads, and everybody here is, looking to help you with that. And come to the Ride Leader Kickoff on May 12th. It's a great place to find people, and send, once you've done your 3 co-leads, send an email to either Emily or myself with the list of what you've done. Let us know, and we'll get you tagged up as a leader and off and running. Next slide. And just a refresher here, if you're looking to do any of those specialty rides, here's the leaders. Their contact information can be found on the under the About tab on the website. And so if you want to lead a specialty ride, make sure that that's one of your co-leads. Next slide, please. Couple other things. The kickoff we've talked about a couple of times. Encourage you to reach out and contact ride leaders that you know to assist. If you see a ride on the calendar that looks interesting and you think you'd like to help, just contact the ride leader and ask to co-lead. There's also a Slack channel for those of you who use Slack. The hashtag rides-leader. Post something there that you're a co-leader looking to help a leader, and I'm sure somebody will pick you up and take you up on your offer. Otherwise, I'm the VP of Rides. Welcome to contact me directly, and I will set you up with somebody to do some co-leads. And I know Emily would do the same. I know any of those co-lead program coordinators would do that. Barbara and John, I'm volunteering you as well as Robin and Ed, contact any of us and we'll hook you up with another leader so you can do some co-leads. Anything else, Robin? What's the last slide? Resources, let's keep going. The last couple things, I think I've talked about most of them. Experienced ride leaders, the support staff that we discussed, the website under the Ride Leader tab, and then certainly the Ride Leader Handbook, and then also the Slack account. So it should be enough information there to get anybody started who really wants to lead rides for us this year. And the slides will also be posted to the website probably in the next day or so, as well as the video from tonight. So thank you all very much. We're going to open it up for questions now. Robin, I'm going to ask you to start with anything that's in the chat. And then anyone who has a question, if you could use the raise hand function, and then Robin will call on you so that we don't have a lot of people talking over each other. So Robin, anything in the chat that we need to address?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. One great question came up, which is that, you mentioned, Mary, insurance requires that we review the route. What does that really mean?
In my opinion, in the best of all possible worlds, you ride the route. You're not going to see it better any other way than from a bicycle, especially if it's a route you're not familiar with. You really need to ride the route. Second choice is get your best friend to ride the route for you and report anything back to you, whether it's turns on the GPS route that don't work, any road hazards that are in the way, anything like that. Also, driving the route would work. But if it's a route you're not familiar with, it's ill-advised to post it as a ride and go send a whole bunch of people out there if you haven't scoped it out. And if you don't have the time to do that, then my suggestion would be you find a route that you're more familiar with, or you find somebody, talk to somebody that maybe if you see any indication somewhere that someone else has ridden it, you put something out on the Google group, say, hey, this route, has anybody ridden it recently? That kind of thing. John, you do this a lot. Do you have any other comments on that? And you're muted, John. You need to unmute.
I think you covered it.
Okay. But if you're going to lead it, you really need to know it. You can't wing it on this stuff. It's just too critical.
Yeah. So the next question came around underaged riders. Well, sort of. So Karen asked a question about whether the registration shows the age of a rider, because if we're serving alcohol, how will we know if we're serving underage people? But it made me wonder if we should say something about underage riders.
Ed, you want to talk to this?
We don't permit underage riders.
18 is the limit for CRW riders.
Yeah.
Whether you're
We're working on possibly doing like a special family ride day, but that's been proposed and we're working on it. So, we might be able to do something, but generally speaking, we don't permit young riders on our rides. That being, well, I'll just leave it at that. That is our policy.
Great. And then I know, Philip, you had a couple of questions earlier. Is there anything still on your mind that you'd like to ask?
Not really. Just the warning. If anyone else has more to say about it, about the default URL. Oops, sorry.
No, that was good. We stayed on track.
I've found that using the default URL and then postponing a ride then caused problems with the links on the calendar. And I talked to Jack Donahue, and he suggested putting in a specific URL, just make something up like my favorite ride, instead of using the default, which includes the date.
Got it. Good tip. Any other questions from folks?
wow. Okay.
I have one comment because I saw a couple of things come in on Bike Thursday, and so I just want to let people know the rides start the first week of May, and people have to sign up. We do not put the GPS site or the address of where we're starting on the route, on the calendar. We send it out the night before. We try very hard to keep our numbers at no more than, well, last year was 30, this year I'm going up to 36, because we could have 40, 50, 60 people show up, and we can't manage that. We have 3 leaders and we go out in 3 groups.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Anyone else? Okay, I think